Hi, I'm Walter. I'm the Dutch mentor, and welcome back to the S.M.A.R.T-Performance Podcast, where S stands for self-care, M for mindful growth, A for adaptive problem solving, R for rhythmic operation, P for building a thriving community, and of course, P for performance. Today, we're going to be talking about leadership behavior. So stick with us. It's going to be a nice 15 to 20-minute conversation. Kurt, thank you very much for being here. And the topic is about imposter syndrome. And that is something that way too many people suffer from. And the sad thing is they don't overcome it. We're going to talk about why, and we're going to talk about what you can do in order to become a better version of yourself, and you too go on that acceleration into whatever it is that you want to do. Kurt, thank you for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Walter. Yeah, so I spent about a decade working in the manufacturing sector, in the manufacturing world. I supervised people in a production process. I also did some recruiting for labor workforce. And then I led in the nonprofit world for about another decade, learned how to lead volunteers, learned how to motivate volunteers, and what a different world that is. And all of those things have led me to launch a coaching practice where we spend a lot of time helping people understand how they show up in their leadership roles and how they might rather show up, and how do we help them get.
Yeah, thank you for that. It is an interesting space. I spend a lot of time, of course, in the healthcare sector, slightly different from you are. But on the end of the day, people who are highly technical beings who get promoted into leadership often fall into that valley of despair. That an area that they were not trained for, and nobody really taught them how to be a highly effective leader in their bachelor's or master's degree. And very few companies do this training and development process well. So imposter syndrome is something that's very common. But since we throw the term around so often, why don't you give us a definition of what is imposter syndrome in your eyes?
Yeah, first let me say, Walter, I love the way you talk about the valley of despair. I mean, I think you're right. Like, so much of this stuff doesn't get trained, and so much of this stuff we just have to navigate on our own. When in reality, I think really what we need to do is like be our fullest selves
Yeah.
in the places we lead. And I think imposter syndrome is a symptom of not knowing how to do that, or not understanding that that's what real leadership looks like. So I define imposter syndrome as, at a high level, the real and constant fear that I'm going to be found out, either found out to not be what I advertise myself to be, found out that I don't belong, found out that I haven't done what I think I've done. But that key word for me is found out, that there's a danger of being found out at every turn in my organization and in my leadership roles.
So, great definition. The sad thing is, many people are imposters. And that is one thing that's so dangerous in leadership, that people get promoted because they were really highly effective doers. But they don't admit to the fact that when they go from technical to leading, that leading is very different, and they end up continuing to do, because that's the only way they can keep their shit together, so to speak, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I always say people need to remember that leading is a profession, and people need to dedicate time to become professionals, to become
Yeah.
proficient at that. So, talking about imposter syndrome itself. So the symptoms is, I feel I might be found out. What's the next thing after that you would how we can start addressing that, or what people need to do for themselves to say, hey, maybe I fit into this category.
Yeah, man, Walter, like you say something and then I want to talk about it, and then you ask me a question. I love the way you frame that. Like, some people are imposters. I wonder what you would say. I am going to answer your question, but I do wonder what you would think about this idea that, I wonder if those that are actually imposters actually feel like imposters, or if there's a level of like, if I'm an imposter, I'm probably not going to feel like I'm going to get found out. I've probably, like, I don't want to say narcissist, that's a strong word, but I think the actual imposters might actually not feel what we're talking about today.
Well, the interesting part, and true imposter is a bullshit artist, and they are
Yeah.
often good salespeople, and they have a way to be romanticized, to use their art of language to get through all of these things. The problem is that they are the imposter. The problem is often speaking to a bunch of imposters. So
Yeah.
very few people are true experts, and
Yeah.
so if we start peeling back the onion
Yeah.
and and do it in an intentional way, I can quickly find out if you know what you do. And this is a prime example of that, right? So I interviewed lots of people for technical positions and going up into leadership as well. So people write on their resume, "I am an expert at Excel," and my mouth starts
Yeah.
drooling when I hear that. I say, "You are." So that's exactly the skill that I'm looking for. Oh, by the way, here is a computer, and here's a data set, and here's a website you can get information from. Why don't you make me up 2 or 3 PowerPoint slides and show me what you can do on Excel? And 9 out of 10 people fall flat.
Yeah.
Because the
Yeah.
thing is, they never thought that somebody would challenge them on that capability. And that's something when I work with people, especially getting them ready for interviews, is that I talk about it's not about the first layer. It's the second, third, or fourth layer that you need
Yeah.
to have in store and working on. So again, from your perspective and the experience that you have, go back to the question is what is the imposter to do? Those people who have self-awareness enough or were pointed out by a superior that they need to gain knowledge and gain confidence.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think there's two approaches. I think there are people that I coach who need more skills, right? Who are actually lacking in some skills, and I think those are the easy ones. I mean, you used the word technical and adaptive earlier. I mean, the technical challenges are the easiest. I can learn more.
Hmm.
I can help people learn more. The adaptive stuff is much harder. So, I think the first step for someone who might actually belong, who might actually be a good leader, but feels out of place or feels like they were rushed into something. I think for that, when there's not an actual technical gap, I think the first thing that we encourage people to do is to name it, either to a coach like myself or you, or to a trusted friend, to be able to put something like that, in the oxygen, we'll say, like to be able to put it in the light is actually a pretty important first step, to be able to name, hey, I feel pretty exhausted. Hey, I'm not showing up like I want to because I'm worried about being found out. I have a client who was in a master's degree program late in life. And what they voiced to me was that every time they went to submit a paper, they would hover their mouse over their submit button, and they would feel this internal fear that this is the paper, this is the one that they're going to find out that I don't belong in this master's program. Not true, right? Obviously not true. So I think in a case like that, well, I shouldn't say obviously not true. What I knew in the moment, that was
Oh
not
yeah.
true. Uh, I think being able to name, this is exhausting. This is not how I want to be. This is impacting the work that I do. And it's taking energy away from the work that I do. Being able to name that and get it in the open, in the light, I think is an important first step. I, I think so many of us believe this is what it means to adult, if I can use that as a verb. I think many of us just believe that's the cost of leadership, is to constantly be looking over our shoulders. And I'm not convinced that that's the way leadership is supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean, if you talk about setting up a winning environment, which is one of the key responsibilities of a leader, you don't want anybody to ever feel like that, right? Because that's a losing entity, and really a lot of negativity around that. Of course, the interesting part, the difference between somebody who's an imposter that you have well described, to somebody who has low confidence or codependence, are very different. Ultimately speaking, what we want people to do is to lead with confident humility, right? And you do not need to be that expert on everything. You just need to know how to manage the resources or surround
Yeah.
yourself with really great people. So
Yeah.
pride and ego often stands in the way. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. That's a good question. Can you ask the question differently, Walter?
Sure. So the people tend to know, some people know, have self awareness enough that they have low confidence or they're codependent on others or even feel imposter syndrome. But to ask for help, that's where your pride and ego
Sure.
get in the way.
Yep.
What can people do to help overcome that? Or how can, if I see somebody who's suffering from that, how can I approach that person to help them across that barrier so they can get the help they need?
Yeah. Yeah. One of the ways that I think about this is that there's a cost to everything.
Mhm.
right? There is a cost to living with imposter syndrome, leading with imposter syndrome. There is a tangible cost to doing that. There's also a tangible cost to asking for help. I might even think about it like this. There's a risk. There might even be a risk to asking for help. Maybe we do look weak. Maybe we do look incompetent. Whatever it is, there's a cost to both of these things. I think what I like to think about for myself and for my clients is, when does one cost start to outweigh the other? And I think when that balance, if you will, or that scale starts to shift, and we can say the cost of continuing to lead and live the way I am, when that outweighs the cost of asking for help, then I'm going to get into action and ask for help. I think the key is, I mean, you've said self awareness a couple times right now. I think the key is being self aware enough to know that everything has a cost, and to be able to measure the current cost of living, looking over our shoulders, feeling like an imposter, versus the cost of asking for help. Uh, I think often it feels much more risky to ask for help and more costly, but I might say that cost is often mismeasured.
So again, that's a personal thing that you can do with
Yes.
somebody you feel is a trust partner and have that discussion. Again, to looking at leaders who are listening to this, is that it is a responsibility of a highly effective leader to do talent assessment on a very regular basis, not on an annual basis, right? I'm totally against annual performance agreement evaluation. I think they're garbage, and it's just nothing else but a checkbox. Using a box 9 approach, but really also do understand what are some career stoppers, and having honest conversations with people, then giving them the resources they need to help overcome that, because there are many people who are diamonds in disguise. Once you can unlock that imposter syndrome or that low confidence level and give them the security they need in order to continue to grow, it's amazing what can happen with these folks, right? So it's really important. So let's switch now from having the diagnosis on how to be how to understand and what the topics are. Uh, how can we now start the recovery process? I love equations. In the quick chat we had, you talked about equation. Tell about the equation and what can people do on an actionable basis coming out of this conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Walter. I hate equations. I have said once I graduated with my master's degree, I'm not doing any more math, and doggone it, I made an equation. Yeah, so we have a thing we call the transformational equation, and let me say, I think transformation happens over a long time. So this is simplifying quite a lot. But we believe, as humans in general, as leaders, as people trying to live our lives well, we have dozens of encounters every day, encounters that make us feel like imposters, encounters that make us react in ways we don't understand, right? We have dozens of those every day. And oftentimes those just get swept under the rug. So the first part of our equation, our full equation, is E plus R equals T. The E is encounters. We have these encounters. The invitation then is to reflect on each of those encounters, probably not in the moment, maybe an hour later, 2 hours later, 6 hours later, at the end of the day, whatever it is, to reflect on those and ask some key questions. What happened? What emotions stirred up in me that made me feel like I had to hide as an imposter? Who was involved, and what did I do? And maybe the most important question is, what would I rather do next time? And we believe those two things, E plus R, encounter plus reflection, will always equal transformation, because what we believe about humans is that once we see something, we can't unsee it. If I have right in front of me, here's an encounter I had, here's what I did, here's what I'd rather do next time, I might not know what to do right now to make it different, but I know that I can't ignore it. I mean, I can always ignore it. But many of us that are in leadership roles are hardwired to see a problem and take steps to fix it. So we really do think that is like the most silver bullet piece of information we can give people that we coach to grow and to transform, is to say, have an encounter, reflect on it. Now you see it, and you get to have agency to decide what to do going forward.
Very good. In the show notes, there will be hopefully a clear equation: E plus R equals T. And it's
Yes.
so funny is that I use the E plus R equals O, which events in life will happen. It's how we react to lower brain or respond with upper brain. it will give you an outcome, right? And the outcome is often worse when we react to things versus how we respond to things. And it is something that holds true in just about everything that we do. So thank you for sharing that. Very, very insightful. With that said, give me an example of a client so people can lock into that and kind of like can visualize what it is that you talk about. And then we'll talk about where we can find you and how we can continue to learn.
Yeah. So I have a client who we do a lot of work with first formation, family of origin. We're not therapists, but we do a lot of work with little T trauma, not big T trauma, little T trauma. So I have a client who knows that they had an experience when they were a teenager that made them feel really embarrassed, made them realize that standing out is dangerous, that their classmates are going to make fun of them, their family's going to make fun of them. What we do, then their nervous system says, I'm going to protect you from that. And that carries into adulthood. It carries into leadership. So I have a client in his 50s who is just now understanding, like, I had this encounter where I lashed out at a volunteer leader. This is a nonprofit leader. This person lashed out. And what they learned in this time of reflection, and reflection's a big, scary word sometimes, but what they noticed when they asked themselves that question is that they feared that volunteer leader's response was going to be similar to that embarrassing moment in their teens. That they feared that they were going to be seen as incompetent or be made fun of or be ridiculed or have their leadership capacity or credibility lessened. So that drove all sorts of automatic behaviors in them to sort of neutralize that threat, right? To keep that volunteer leader from thinking they were incompetent. The sort of quippy cliche would be, well, if you're going to think I'm dumb, I'm going to like go at you hard so that you can't think that I'm dumb. I'm going to show you how not dumb I am. And that's what this person was doing. And I just believe wholeheartedly, without intentional time and space to sit down and reflect on that encounter, this leader would just do the same thing all the rest of their time in leading. Nothing would ever change.
Thank you for that example. A post-mortem is so critically important,
Yeah.
especially on the life-changing events that take place, because that's
Yeah.
where the real learning comes from. Not
Yeah.
only learning, it also prevents you from making the same mistake over and
Yeah.
over. So, Kurt,
Yeah.
a really great session. Where can we find you?
Yeah. So our website's the best way. The coaching practice I co-own is called Brimstone Coaching Group. So brimstonecoachinggroup.com is the best place to find us. We offer free initial inquiry calls for anybody that's curious about the work we do or how we do it. We would love to have those conversations with your listeners that are saying, man, that resonates. So brimstonecoachinggroup.com. We also have a book out called Live Fully, Lead Authentically that captures our coaching philosophy and how we think about life and leadership and how to integrate those two things really well.
Excellent. And that will be in the show notes as well for easy point of reference. And parting thought, a quote, or something smart.
Something smart. Walter, that's a good setup. That's a high bar. Yeah, I think what I want to say to leaders, that taking time to reflect does not make you a bad leader. It does not make you weak. You're not putting anything off. Most of us leaders are wired to do and to produce and to give energy towards things that bear tangible fruit. This practice of reflection in this E+R=C, it's vital. It feels secondary. It feels like we're stepping away from our main roles. But I want to say, I think it might be one of the most vital pieces of leadership is to be able to zoom out and look at what we're doing and how we're doing it. And if it matches who and how we want to be.
Very powerful statement. It is about staying upper brain rather than lower brain. My coach, my mentor, Mike Fasina, wrote a great book about that, and I think it's something that people need to take to heart because that's where great leadership comes from. Kurt, thank you very much for being here today. I really, really appreciate it. To the audience, thank you. Remember, without meaningful action, not much gets done. You've all forgotten about this conversation in about 15 to 20 minutes. So take a small action step coming right out of this. Apple Store, download the Dutch Mentor mobile app. You can get started there for the first 7 days for free. And after that, for just $1.50 a day, to keep yourself honest and on your journey Thank you, everybody, and have a good time. We'll see you again the next time. Thank you, Kurt.
Yeah, thank you.